Yeah, so there's a pasuk in this week's parsha that Rashi says that it really belongs in the beginning of the Torah. The first Rashi in Chumash on Bereshis Bara Elokim says that Lo Yehoya Tzorech Lahaskil Elo Mehachodesh Hazelochem Shehi Mitzvah Rishayna Shenistavu Bo Yisrael Matam Pasach Bibereshis. Rashi explains why, nevertheless, it was Pasach Bibereshis. But we see that in principle, the Torah should begin with Hachodesh Hazelochem. And that's because it's mitzvah rishayna shenistavu b'Yisrael. Probably that means that the purpose of Torah is, as the Zohar says, it's miloshen hayra'ah, miloshen of giving a lesson, and that's to teach us the way of life, haderech asher yelchu bo v'amaisa asher yasu, and that's mitzvahs. And therefore, the Torah should really begin with the mitzvah rishayna, hachodesh hazelochem. But probably we need to explain why Hachodesh Hazeh Lochem is the mitzvah Rishayna Shenistavu Bo Yisrael. Why is this the first mitzvah that Klal Yisrael as a nation received? You know, there are two things in Hachodesh Hazeh Lochem. One is that Hachodesh Hazeh Lochem Rosh Chadoshim Rishayn Hu Lochem L'Chodshei Hashana, that from here on we begin counting the Chadoshim from Nisan to Adar, and not from Tishrei to Elul, as we did before, as it says in the Targum Yonasim ben Azil in Malachim, that we used to count from Tishrei, and here, from here on, we're counting from Nisan. And the other thing is obviously the fact that we have over here the mitzvah of Kiddush HaChodesh, the mitzvah of Kiddush HaChodesh, which means, first of all, that we count Chodshei Levana, that our year is a lunar year and not a solar year. So there's one thing that when do we start? We start from this. And the other thing is, what do we count? We count the Chodshei HaLevana and not the Chodshei HaChama. The fact that from here on, Nisan is the Rosh Chadoshim, Mistama is connected with the fact that in Nisan, Yitzias Mitzrayim takes place, as we actually see that the parsha of Hachodesh Hazeh Lochem is about the Korban Pesach and about the actual Yitzia from Mitzrayim, which means that until now we were counting time from the Bereshis Bara Elokim, especially according to the Man Amar, B'Tishrei Nivra Olam. Until now we were counting natural time, and from here on we're counting historic time, meaning that we're counting from Yitzias Mitzrayim. We're counting from Yitzias Mitzrayim. The natural time is a creation of the Rebbeinu Shalom, but history is our making. Even the Oisis of Moifsim of Yitzias Mitzrayim, we're told that it's Ba'avur Zeh, Osa Hashem Li, that it's Mikoyach, the mitzvahs, that the Matzu Morim Menachel Fanecha. This is a time that we create. And this is the mitzvah Rishayna before all mitzvahs, because we're meant to understand the impact of mitzvahs. It's not just that we do mitzvahs in time, but we redefine time. We make history. That's the time that we live from here on. And that expresses itself also in the mitzvah of Kiddush HaChodesh. We sanctify time. We say, Yisrael, v'katshinu lizmanim. And therefore, lo yehoya tzarech lahaskil elo me'achodesh hazeh lochem she mitzvah rishayna shenistavu b'Yisrael, because this really defines the purpose of all mitzvahs. It's about transforming time, making it holy. Yisrael v'katshinu lizmanim. That's the idea of hachodesh hazeh lochem. But it has another meaning, Mistama, because the Gemara tells us in Sukkah Daf Chavtes that Bizman Shahachama Loika, it's a siman ra to the Umas Oila. Bizman Shahalavana Loika, it's a siman ra l'soinehem shel Yisrael. It's an expression that the Gemara uses, Lashon Akiyah, meaning us. And the Gemara says, my time, she Yisrael, she Umas Oila moinem le Chama, Yisrael moinem le levana. So we see that the fact that we count our months based on the Levana, it comes to define who we are and what we are. to the point that the Levana becomes a symbol of what we're up to. I mean, Bisman Shah Levana like it. It's a siman ra l'seinem shel Yisrael. We actually say in the bracha of Kiddush Levana, we clearly state that the Levana is an ateres tiferes la'amusei boten, which means that it's a crown of splendor. Amusei boten really means born of the womb, but in this context, it's based on a pasuk in Yeshaya, where Klal Yisrael is referred to Amusei boten, and the meaning is that just like a mother carries her child in the womb, so also Klal Yisrael, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, carries them like a mother carries her fetus in the womb, and that's the meaning of Amusei boten. So we're saying that the Levana is an ateres teferes for Klal Yisrael. We're identified with the Levana. It's not just that technically we count the months based on the Levana. So what does this mean? We actually continue and explain. We say that it's ateres teferes la'amusei boten shehem asidim lehischadesh kemoisa ulefor leyotzim al shem kvod malchusei. In other words, that they, Klal Yisrael, are destined to renew themselves like the Levana renews itself. Which means, so to speak, that in the mitzvah of Achodesh Hazel Lochem, we were given the koyach to be mischadesh, like the Levana that's mischadesh every month. You know, it's a rebirth. We consider it moilad haLevana, and that's the mischadesh k'moisa. But when are we going to be mischadesh k'moisa? So the Kolbai says that this is referring to Tchias HaMesim, that L'Asid Lovay, there'll be Tchias HaMesim, and that's when the Klal Yisrael will be Mischadesh Kemoisa. You know, there's an interesting minig that's brought in Masechta Sofrim, which Yeshua Yormistam knows there's a lot of controversy about who wrote the Masechta Sofrim. I mean, maybe it's Tanaik, it's Amoraim, it's Gainim, maybe it's Rishonim. There are various opinions, but in any case, it's a very ancient text. In the Masechta Sofrim, it says that B'Shas, you mekadesh the Levana, Oimer lechaveiroi gimel pa'amim sholem aleich. And this is brought in the Ramah, in Siman Tov Chavav, in Shulchan Aruch, and we do that. It's in the Sidurim. But Oimer lechaveiroi, actually, in the Sidurim, it says, like it says in the reliable Sidurim, it says like it says in Shulchan Aruch and like it says in the Masechta Sofrim, v'omer lechaveiroi gimel pa'amim. You say to one friend 3 times, Shalom Aleichem. But in the more modern Sidurim, I saw that they take it right, v'omer lechaveirov. But that's not really what it says. But in any case, we don't know why do we say Shalom Aleichem by Kiddush Levana? What's the meaning of that? So the Magen Avraham in Siman Tov Chavav brings that since we just said Tipoil Aleim a Masa v'Fachad, so I say to my friends, I don't mean you. Shalom Aleichem. In other words, peace be on you. In other words, not like the Tipoil Aleim. Achrei Shekilel Tipoil Aleim a Masa v'Fachad is Omer lechaveiroi Shalom Aleichem. The source of this is actually, as the other points can bring it, from in the Shiori Knesset Agdola, the sources from the Siddur of Hertz. The Siddur of Hertz was actually from Troyes, but he became the Rav in Frankfurt in the 1500s, and he wrote a Siddur, and he brings this reason actually in a very interesting lashon. He says, "Shomati mi Mordechai Hatzadik." Not the biblical Mordechai Hatzadik. V'hu Yosis Kibel Mirishonim. This Mordechai Hatzadik is an old man that was Mekabel from Rishonim. Achrei ki kilel v'amar tipoil aleim imosav afachad ro'ui loymar loy olecha ki im shalom alecha. I don't mean to curse you. You should have peace. The Eliyahu Rabbah brings in the name of the Arizal that this is connected to the Miut HaLevana, and the Kitruk, that the Levana was Makatrik. Maybe it means that, you know, the kitrug of the Levana. First of all, that's shaykh to Kiddush Levana, because if not for the miut Levana, there would be no Kiddush Levana. Yeah, and the pshat is that we actually are mispalo in the Kiddush Levana Shiamale Pgimas Halavana v'lo yeh bo shum miut. Now the miut Halavana came from the kitrug of Ein Shnei Malachim Mishtamshim Mikeser Echad, which is really about machlokes, and therefore it's appropriate that when we kaddish the Levana and we're dealing with the tikkun of the Pgam Levana, we say Shalom Aleichem. Yeah, we make peace with others, because that's the antithesis of the Ein Shnei Malachim Mishtamshim B'Keseh Echad, the Kitrug Levana, which was Gerim the Miut. So that could be a reason. So, which would mean maybe in a sense that we play a role in the correction of the Pgam of the Kilkul Halavana. In other words, by our shalom, we're playing a role in the generations-long process that brings about Lasid Lavai, the Milui of the Gimas Halavana. I once heard from a Yid, his name was Reb Yudel Rabinovich. He lived in Gola, and he used to learn in a shul right next to the Brisker Yeshiva in the Spinker shul. And we used to schmooze quite often. So he once told me this word, the following word, that that the Gemara says in Megillah, Daf Gimel Amud Aleph, Amri B'Shua ben Levi, Asur la'adam she'yitein shalom lechaverei ba'layla, chayshinan dilma sheidhu. Right? So it might be a ghost, so you shouldn't give shalom lechaverei ba'layla. However, the Gemara in Brachas Daf Mem Gimel says, V'amar Reb Zutra ba'Tovya Amarav, avuka kishnayim. If you have a torch, it's like two people. Rashi says, Le'inyan masha omru al yetzei adam yechidi ba'layla. So if he has a flashlight, he could go yechidi b'layla, it's kishnayim. Is avuka kishnayim. The yoreach kishloisha. Yoreach is like shloisha. The Gemara says like this: Le'echad, if one person is a yotzei yechidi b'layla, so the shade is nire umazik. He's in danger. L'shnayim nire ve'enoi mazik. But l'shloisha enoi nire kol ikir. That's what it says in the Gemara. So maybe he said that la'oira yoreach, there's no chash of dilma shedu. And Memela, we celebrate the rebirth of the moon, that now we have the oira yoreach, so Memela, we can give shalom aleichem. So immediately, after when we do Kiddush Levana, we say shalom aleichem, because yoreach kishloisha, and it takes away the chash of dilma shedu. The Lavush says another reason. He says that the Amira Shalom Aleichem is because she kiblu pnei Ashchin. Not clear what does Hakbolas pnei Ashchin. It actually says in the Gemara, in the Brisa, we say it in Kiddush Levana that Ilamoli loizochu Yisrael lahakbil pnei avim sheb'shamayim elo pamachas b'chodesh dayim omar Abaye hilkoch tzorich l'meimro muhumot. So Kiddush Levana is considered Hakbolas Pnei Ashchina, not that we understand exactly why, but we for sure don't understand how does Hakbolas Pnei Ashchina have to do with Shalom Aleichem. So it could be that how is really Kiddush Levana Hakbolas Pnei Ashchina? Maybe because as the pasuk says in Tehillim, ki eresh shomecha maasei etzba oisecha yoreach v'koichovim Asher koinanto mo enosh ki sizkirenu uben adam ki sifkidenu. In other words, so seeing the moon, it humbles us, and through humility, we are makbel pnei Ashchina, because really the Shchina is apparent. It's just that why don't we see the Shchina? Because we're wrapped up in our own self. But if we have humility, then we see the Shechina, and therefore the exposure to the Levana makes us humble, and Memela, it's Hakbolas Pnei Shechina, Kenzai. And Memela could be that the Shalom Aleichem is also shaykh to this, because, when people are Balei Gaiva, they don't get along with each other. But as soon as a person gets rid of his sense of self, so he has the ability to say Shalom Aleichem. There's another knetch to this, and maybe I once told you, because the Gemara says in Sanhedrin, Daf Mem Beis Amud Aleph, this Gemara Tana that we learned in the Brisa, Zibeir B'Shmo, Ilamoli Leizachu Yisrael lahakbel pnei avim sheb'shamayim elo pamachas b'chodesh dayim Omar Abaye hilkoch Tzorech l'meimrim umid. As Rashi says, Hoya lo mekabel pnei ashchene, me'umid bo'el avruchi. Now the Gemara continues, Mereimer umar zutra mekatfi ahadodi umevorchi. That Mereimer umar zutra, they didn't stand, they stood, but they leaned on each other's shoulder. And that's how they made the bracha. So the Yad Ramah says, Kivin des keinim hoyu v'lo yochlu lamoid lachein nismechu. It was hard for them to stand, so they leaned on each other. So it's a kula that we're matir b'shas adchak a smicha. But in the Tur, it says not so. In the Tur, in Siman Tov Chavav, it says, Mereimer v'Rav Ashi mekatfi lehu umevarchi. Pirush derech chashivus lahakbil pnei ashkin. So what in the world is he saying? That it's a derech hashivus lahakbil pnei ashkina. If I lean on your shoulder, you lean on my shoulder. What is that supposed to mean? So the Bach says, Nira shirat saloima, sheloi hoya oimeid kol echad b'fnei atzmo yumavorach. Elon ischabru yachad kisfeihem la'adodi, shezeu derech hashivus lahakbolas pnei ashkina. So this means actually that being together with one another is the derech lahakbol pnei ashkina. Because as long as a person is wrapped up within himself, he can't be makbel pnei ashchina. It's only when I give you a shoulder, you give me a shoulder. That's the derech fakbos pnei ashchina, and that could also be connected with the idea of saying shalom aleichem. But lemaisa, with all this, we still don't understand why we should say 3 times shalom aleichem, and especially the way it says in the va'omer lechavei roi. To say to the same person 3 times Shalom Aleichem, this sounds very strange. But you know, as the Kolboy says, that Shehem Hasidim L'Schadish Kemoisa is in Tchias HaMesim. So you know, it could be that in every Kiddush Levana, we're touching on the concept or on the experience of Tchias HaMesim, on the Shehem Hasidim L'Schadish Kemoisa, and therefore, in spite of the fact that I saw you just a moment ago, we were together in shul, but nevertheless, at this moment, I'm like all new, and you're all new, and therefore I say to you, Shalom Aleichem. It's as I met somebody that I never met before, because we're touching on the concept of Tchias HaMesim. Now, in Tchias HaMesim, we have 3 dimensions, because we say in the Shemona Esrei, Mechaye Mesim Berachamim Rabbi. And we also say in Yigdal, Mesim Yechaya Kel Beroiv Chasdoi. And we say in the bracha that is said in a Beis HaKvoris, V'osid la'achyoischem bedin. So you see that in Tchias HaMesim, there's the dimension of Chesed, the dimension of Mesim Yechaya Kel Beroiv Chasdoi, the dimension of Din, Osid la'achyoischem bedin, and the dimension of Rachamim, which is Mechaya Mesim Berachamim Rabin. So Mamela, it could be that the 3 Shalom Aleichems are referring to the 3 dimensions of Tchias HaMesim. Since the Shalom Aleichem is really based on the renewal, so we say Shalom Aleichem 3 times. Yeah. Now the thing is like this. It's Mustama, the kind of word that Im Lo Yoyel, Lo Yazik. Now, but Tchias HaMesim is really not just La'asid Lavoi. As the Abu Draham says, that one of the times that we mention Mechaya Mesim in the bracha of Gvuros, in the bracha of Ata Gibor, is not referring to the resurrection of the dead in the long-term future, but it's referring to the waking up every morning, which is a Ke'ein Tchias HaMesim, because Shina is Echad Mishishim B'Misa, and every time a Yid wakes up, that's a me'ain of Tchias HaMesim. So a Yid that connects with that idea, so he knows that today is the first day of the rest of my life. And by the way, the rest of my life is only today, because tomorrow is going to be the first day once again. But in any case, so that allows us to live a life of renewal every day, to live a life of Tchias HaMesim. As the Abu Draham says, that's the Taish of the Bracha. So in every day we are shaykh to be mischadesh kemoisa on a certain level. Now, Geulas Mitzrayim appears in the parsha of Achodesh Hazelochem. Also, you know that in Birchas Hachodesh, Birchas HaChodesh, we say, Misha Asa Nisim L'Avoseinu V'Goal Oisam Me'avdos L'Cheirus Hu Yigal Oisanu B'Korev. So why are we talking about Geula now? About the Misha Asa Nisim L'Avoseinu in the Birchas HaChodesh? Probably because Geulas Mitzrayim appears in the parsha of HaChodesh Zalachem. But it indicates that there's a real connection between the Geula and the HaChodesh Hazeh and that's why it appears in the parsha of HaChodesh, and that's why when we are mevarich the Chodesh, we say Misha Asa Nisim L'Avoseinu V'Goal Oisam Me'avdos L'Cheirus Hu Yigal Oisanu B'Korev. Now, what's the pshat? Weiß the Chois that it seems that Hischatshus, renewal, is really shaykh to the Iker concept of Cherus, of liberty. And why is that? Because it's like Rav Yehuda Halevi writes in a poem, Avdei Hazman, Avdei Avodim Hein. Those that are enslaved by time are slaves of slaves. Eved Hashem, hu levadei chafshi. Only he's a free man. Now, I don't claim to understand what he meant to say, but I just want to say that to be enslaved, it doesn't have to necessarily be that I'm enslaved by somebody else. I could be enslaved by myself, by the myself of yesterday. In other words, I feel that my yesterday looked the way it looked and the day before looked the way it looks. I mean, I don't consider it a real possibility to make a change and to move beyond all those trappings that I'm trapped in. And that's Avdei Hazman, that I'm enslaved by time. And the Eved Hashem is Hulavadei Chafshi, that he can rise above time and he can be Miskadesh Kemoisa. But often that, you see, Chazal also say, the Gemara says in Erev in Daf Nun Daled, that Al Tikri Chorus, Elocherus, in the Luchas Rishonis, and the Gemara says that it's Cherus, Min HaGolius, Cherus Mi Malach HaMavis. What kind of an expression is it to be liberated from the Malach HaMavis? Because really the Malach HaMavis is about getting old and expiring. And true Cherus is that every moment is everything. And therefore, if somebody is a Meschadish, he's free from the Malach HaMavis. So we're not defined by the past, neither by the future. We're defined by the now. The past is only based on many nows that already passed, and the future is many nows that are going to be. But the now that's now, that's really what defines me, and therefore I have the koyach to be mischadish, and therefore this is where Torah was hoya tzorich lahaschil, because that's a most important message. That's why it's the mitzvah rishona, because we have to have the ability all the time to take hold of our time. Yisrael the kachinu l'zmanim, not become enslaved by time, but to take control of time and to make the time now. Okay, that's Rabbi Isai, what I have to say.